the way I teach with the students is escalation of force. If you have a drunk buddy as an adult, who gets a little too much Irish whiskey in them and they want to mess around with you, it makes absolutely no sense and is completely illegal if you just beat the crud out of them and put them through a glass table versus you just push them off. You say, hey, dude, calm down, and then there's escalation from that point. If somebody is continuing to be aggressive and then you tattoo them a little bit to give them an incentive not to stop, and then or to stop rather, and then if they continue going on and you wind up breaking somebody's arm, or it's escalation. You can't just immediately jump from nonviolent to put them in the dirt.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Conversations from the Hearth. Today, we have a really special show for you. We're joined by multiple returning guests. Guys, welcome.
Guys, we have so many great guests today, and we're really excited to talk to you all. We got Sensei Jason Brick back with us. He came into the seminar. Sensei Jason Brick, can you tell everyone just a little bit about yourself real quick for those that don't know?
Sure thing. My name, as you said, is Jason Brick. I'm the host of the podcast Safest Family on the Block, where I combine my almost 40 years of martial arts training, my 20 years of journalism, and my 22 years of parenting, and interview subject matter experts ranging from Navy SEALs to suicide counselors to nutritionists about anything that they can teach us about keeping our kids safer.
Awesome. And then we have Sifu Jacob Arenstein. Welcome back, sir. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Good morning. Yes, my name is Jacob Arenstein. I'm the owner of Spring Martial Arts out here in Spring, Texas. Been in law enforcement working through corrections, done a plethora of things, helping to work with law enforcement training, as well as managing our school, training our students, getting our adults where they need to be, getting our kids where they need to be, working with their self-esteem, confidence, a lot of anti-bullying things are what I'm part of right now.
Nice. And then Nick and AJ Gaudynski, welcome back to the show, guys. Can you guys tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. I'll start. One of the senior instructors at the Wisconsin Sport Aikido Club here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Been part of martial arts since 1990 something. Through that, basically studied Tamiki Aikido, Shorin-Ryu, Kodokan Judo. For my day job, I work as a project manager for digital marketing. So there you go.
Yes, sir.
Nice.
Nicholas Gaudynski. I basically have the similar background in martial arts as Alex. I'm currently working a day job in insurance, and prior to that, I was actually a correctional officer for the House of Corrections here in Wisconsin as well.
Nice. Well, welcome, guys. I'm really excited to talk to you about the topic of awareness. This is a really broad topic. Jesse has some questions for us so we can kind of go through and open up this discussion.
Yes, sir. So without further ado, because this is such a broad topic, I thought, man, we could go all over the place with this. I'm going to pare it down a little bit, focus it a little bit. First things first, awareness in the martial arts, in the dojang or in the training hall, in the dojo. What does this look like when we are training, drilling, doing our forms, working with partners? Awareness in the martial arts in that context.
I mean, I can start if you guys want.
Yeah.
For us, it's really just being about aware of your surroundings. Obviously, there comes the respecting your training partners, respecting your instructors. With Aikido, obviously, there's a lot of falling. There's a lot of free motion. So one of the biggest things for us is just being aware of your surroundings, making sure that when you're doing a throw, you know where you're throwing somebody, so you're not throwing them into somebody else who's being thrown or into a wall or so on and so forth. So that spatial awareness in the dojo is very
important.
That can be a surprisingly hard concept for some kids to get.
Yes.
Like standing like right here and then they try to like do a hip throw and like it's just gonna be bad,
it's a hard concept for some adult students starting to get. I mean, you know, in our daily world, we're just stacked on top of each other that, you know, nobody realizes like, hey, I need space to do certain things.
Yeah.
Speak back on that. That's a good point. We just had our last stand-up sparring class for the year last night. So we have typically anywhere from 4, maybe 5 partner groups working on the floor. I try not to go above 5 just to give everyone some space. But when we're doing one-on-ones, moving around the dojo, you know, we have rules. If you run into the mirrors, you run into the wall, both you and your partner have to do 100 push-ups right there. So we have consequences for actions, even if nobody got hurt. You know, pay attention to what you're doing. You don't hurt one another. And, you know, I have a rule, if you can't control something, don't do it. So if you can't control a particular technique, don't throw the technique on the person. And that goes for our grappling as well as our stand-up, because we don't want anybody to get hurt. And then just to add to that for awareness in the training hall, I think one thing a lot of folks like us, we are aware of, but we don't always associate it, is when customers come in. And while we're training with students, who do we address? Do we continue teaching? Do we continue doing what we're doing? Do we have assistants that can take over while we talk to a potential customer? And just being aware of people coming in that you don't usually recognize to be there. So that's another thing that I'd say is very important in what we do.
Yeah.
I think Mr. Arenstein touched on another really important point, which is self-awareness, like only throwing the techniques that you know you can control in a sparring situation, but also to your own emotional state. You know, there are some days, some people come into sparring class after just having had a really bad day at work, having had an argument with a romantic partner who maybe should sit out today. And that also extends to, as we get older, how is that knee? How is that shoulder? Yeah. And are there things you should do with yourself, with your body, let your partner know to prevent yourself from getting injured and then being out of training for weeks or months? And that's also a form of awareness that we don't talk about as much.
True. I've had knee surgery. So when we're doing BJJ and we're starting to do leg locks and such, and I tell people, I said, look, I want you to go ahead and do this to me, but be very careful, as I'll show you how it feels. So let me do it to you first. And then when I tap, let me go. If you don't let me go, you know, I'm going to get hurt. So definitely agree to you on that point.
Yeah. And tapping is another aspect of that, because sometimes you can come into a rolling or a joint lock situation in a mood where maybe you're going to tap that 1 second too late, unless you realize you're in a certain mental state that might not be the healthiest, and then take action to make that shift.
Yeah.
Sir.
One thing I do to help students with that aspect of it, if they're having a bad day, and it goes for me too, if we're having a bad day, like I've talked to my instructors in the past through years of training, and they help me as I help the students. I say, okay, look, you want to do sparring, you're having a bad day. Okay, put your gear on, come work with me. You know, just go ahead, just start punching, kicking, do what you want. I'm going to work with you. I'm not going to hurt you. Just let the aggression out. If you don't want to punch a bag, come work with me. So that way we can help you de-stress and get that anxiety to a manageable level before you leave.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we also teach at our school that when you bow into the dojo, that should be a time for you to let everything go that's on your mind, you know, and it's just a good reminder every time you bow onto the floor, like, okay, I'm going to clear my thoughts, you know, and not take it onto the mats.
I mean, that's the best thing about our what we do in working out. It's when you come in stressed, you leave with those endorphins going and you have a more calm mental state. So you're able to tackle whatever life's problems or situations are thrown at you with a clear head. So that's always a benefit.
Yeah. There's nothing like punching the bag to relieve some stress.
True.
Or kicking somebody in the head. That's awesome.
Had a few of those last night.
We were watching this one Bill Superfoot Wallace documentary at Dojo with our leadership team one time, and this one quote really stuck out in my head. He's just like, you know, I just love kicking people in the head.
Done a couple seminars with Bill. Yeah, he likes kicking people in the head. He's like, hey, see if you can stop my kick. Okay. Good luck.
Yeah. So how about like awareness outside the dojo, guys? How does that awareness manifest on the street, and how would that potentially, save your life or somebody else's life?
Can we go back to in dojo awareness for a second?
Yeah, sure.
I think we touched on it, but there's the other component where you're doing cooperative awareness. I think everybody here has kind of been around long enough and worked with enough people that there's that cooperative nature when you're doing partner drills or you're sparring. And just to play out the scenario, you get the young new guy with youthful exuberance who's going full bore every time they go in and you're working with them. And it's like you have that awareness where you have to be aware of their mindset, and that as hard as they're going, you have to level set them and bring them down without elevating it. So, I mean, sometimes you run into the individual has a little more energy and stamina than us old folks have.
I getting to that point too, and I'm like, oh, you guys are too fast, so I have to have better timing than you.
Yeah. What we run into is we get, especially the newer guys where they want to do everything full bore every time. Even if you're just practicing and learning, and that's just a recipe for disaster and injury. And just realizing it and being aware of it and recognizing it and bringing it back down to a more safe, practical application is something that in dojo is very important.
I think that speaks to self-awareness, which somebody mentioned earlier, I think with Mr. Brick, but you're working with somebody of that age group or that energy level, and can I bring myself to perform as a 20-year-old for a 30-minute class or an hour class? Absolutely. Will I be performing as a 80 to 90-year-old the next day? Also, absolutely. So it's like you have to pace it down, because we all realize that, hey, you got to sleep, you got to wake up, you got to do it all over again tomorrow, and aware of what your limitations are and when you can ramp it up and when you need to tone it down is something that I think we have to think about more and more often in our age group, where the younger crowd, isn't required to do
like that when we were in our 20s. So it's hard.
And to your point too, we have to go to work the next day. They don't. not usually. We have to go to work. We have to go pay the bills and make sure the lights stay on. So if I get hit in the ribs too hard and can't breathe and have a muscle twinge or a bruised rib or something like that, and I'm trying to work, even though I'm sitting at a desk or having to talk to people, that could impede a lot. So having that awareness and understanding that we still have to go back to work, I think helps tone us down personally. I mean, if we didn't have a job, maybe we'd try to keep going at an athletic level of a 20-year-old, but.
If I can hop in here. So we've talked a little bit about awareness from the student perspective and a little bit from the instructor perspective, but I want to push a little more into the instructor zone. When we step out onto the floor as class leaders, as instructors, what does that mindset look like, as opposed to, all right, I'm coming into class, to learn today, to work out today. No, I'm coming into class to lead this class, to teach these students, that next thing in the repertoire.
I could jump in first on that. As soon as I walk into class and I see my students showing up, because I typically get there before everybody, but I gauge it. I gauge everybody in the class, like who's coming in. Are they happy? Are they sad? Are they energetic? Are they tired, mental state wise? Did they just get into an argument with their parents because they didn't want to put their sash on or their pants on? And I gauge all of that with the students as they come in, and I manage my lessons based on what their state of mind is. I can still teach the same technique, but it's how I teach it to them to help them understand it and help clear their minds.
Yes,
so from an instructor's perspective, that's how I do it. I gauge the psychology of the students as they come in, and I watch them before the warm-ups or as they're doing their warm-ups to make sure everybody's going to be pretty much on the same level.
Yes, sir.
We've had kids come in that their parents just got through a divorce. So having to manage children and help them along the way without stirring the pot on the home life. I mean, my parents gone through a divorce when I was 5, so I'm very much familiar with that when we're working with young kids. So it's hard, but it's really, really good if instructors are able to do that, because we can recognize those potential misfires before they start.
Yeah, that's really similar to a philosophy we have here with our leadership team is, teach to the class. If, like 3 people show up and they're in their 50s and 60s, it's going to be a very different class than if you got a bunch of like 20-year-olds who are gunning for it. And, it's going to be a very different class than a bunch of kids, especially maybe a bunch of kids who, have ADHD and their focus is wandering. And having that nuance, that awareness as an instructor means that you can match a great class with whatever student body is coming towards you.
I was gonna say, you just have to be able to read the room. You gotta who's there and just approach it in the way that fits them. And sometimes that's just in your demeanor too, right? If you have a class with maybe a students that are more advanced, you're going to approach it differently. You're going to maybe work more of the advanced stuff and let your guard down a little bit, be a little more fallible when you're demonstrating, not be afraid to make mistakes where, if you got a younger group of people and you're trying to, for lack of better terms, get their buy-in into the style and the discipline, you're going to do the technique that you've done a million times before and that that you can do to perfection and demonstrate it well, where now you get those advanced students that maybe know you on a more personal level. You might let the occasional colorful language slip where you wouldn't do that in front of a group of Q grades and whatnot. So it's just being able to know who's there and know, I think as we said before, know where they're coming from that day.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I think another important aspect of awareness as an instructor is an awareness of our context and how that might differ from the other people on the deck. The most egregious example that we see, I think we've all seen this, this 6'2", 250-pound Marine who's trying to teach a 100-pound woman how to do a technique. Or if we'll see somebody teaching bullying who's our age and never grew up in a school with zero tolerance policies and Facebook. And awareness of how the way we move in the world, the assumptions we make in the world because of the level of our training, our physical size, whether we grew up in the suburbs or in an urban or a rural environment, and how all of that affects the assumptions we make about the world and how we move through the world, and being aware of how that might be completely inappropriate as a starting point for some of the people that we work with, and how we can learn about their contexts to become better teachers.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Definitely agree with you on that, especially because of the generation we grew up in. It's like my dad taught me, hey, they're picking on you, okay? And my mom always said, hey, tell the principal, tell the teacher, tell the counselor, yada, yada, yada. None of it worked. Okay, my dad said, all right, you did all that, right? He said, is there a leader? He said, yeah. He said, hit him. I'm like, okay. He said, you're going to get into a fight, but he's going to leave you alone. And that's how I started it. But now you can't do that. Now you hit the kid in the nose for picking on somebody else and you both get expelled. And in my opinion, it's a little bit ridiculous because you were helping somebody else that was being picked on. You didn't escalate someone to a hospital, but you got the person off of them. I mean, unfortunately, and it's just my opinion of it, and I'm not sure what you guys stand on it, but I think a lot of the politics that are written up, again, zero tolerance and stuff, there's a lot of those folks that they've never been in those situations. So they don't understand the psychology of You know, what happens when a kid curls up in a fetal position and 3 people are stomping his head in, you know, versus defending themselves? There's a lot of folks that they write policies, they've never been in a situation. So I don't know where they stand on that, but that's just my opinion. They should get in the situation first, be aware of it, create a policy that can aid in helping versus detriment everyone.
Yeah, no, zero tolerance just doesn't make sense for anything. Life is just way too nuanced for that.
It's not black and white.
Yeah.
Well, that brings up another important aspect of awareness, which is speaking about schools, understanding what the policies for violence, for protecting yourself from a bully are in school, and also the really understanding the laws about self-defense in your community. You know, because we're giving adults self-defense advice as well. And I've been in lots of classes where they're showing a technique and you think, oh man, so right there, you are now committing aggravated assault.
Yeah.
And so a full awareness. I guess we got 2 corrections officers on the call, so you can speak to that better than I do. But that's another situational awareness place where a lot of instructors could up their game.
I agree. And the way I teach with the students is escalation of force. If you have a drunk buddy as an adult, you know, who gets a little too much Irish whiskey in them and they want to mess around with you, it makes absolutely no sense, and it's completely illegal if you just beat the crud out of them and put them through a glass table, versus you just push them off. You say, hey dude, calm down, you know. And then there's escalation from that point. If somebody is continuing to be aggressive, and then you tattoo them a little bit to give them an incentive not to stop, and then, or to stop rather. And then if they continue going on and you wind up breaking somebody's arm, or it's escalation. You can't just immediately jump from nonviolent to put them in the dirt.
Yeah.
The techniques are taught. They're in our forms. They're in our basic self-defense stuff, but it's where and when and how to apply them is what I think a lot of instructors may be missing, that don't realize the situation or don't recognize what they're actually teaching. If I take a spear hand to the throat, that's going to really hurt me here. So when do I use it? Not very often, but I know how to.
Yeah, and I think, you know, a lot of that goes to, you know, when you're in the classroom or the dojo, you know, it's teaching your students how to handle and deal with conflict and not getting in their way. So we've all been in a situation where you've been sparring and things escalated, they get a little heated, you know, and as an instructor, you have to be aware of those situations, aware of when and why they're happening, you know, and you can let it go to a certain point, but then you have to separate it and make sure that your students understand that it's not appropriate. But they do get that pseudo life experience where they are in a situation where their emotions are running. Things, maybe they don't get to do everything they want, you know, but they get to a situation where they're dealing with conflict in a controlled situation, but they're also dealing with the consequences of that conflict in a controlled situation, which then carries over to, you know, real life application. You know, sometimes your best defense is just walking away, and people need to understand that, and they don't always get those lessons.
Very true.
You know what's funny is so just kind of talking about like the change in political climate and how people have to adjust to different policies and things like that. There's a TV show out there that I'm sure we've all watched that I think captures this in its essence, and that's Cobra Kai.
Yes.
That's the fact that, you know, it's literally it's an 80s philosophy from your main protagonists, you know, in a 2020 world, and you watch the show and you're like, that's the way it was back then, but now it's completely different.
Yeah.
And it's funny, like if you approach it from like this dialogue and this context and you watch it again, you know, just I think they were aware of all that as they approached writing a series, and it's almost comical listening to us talk and then thinking about that show at the same time. So if I
that nostalgia kicks in.
Like satire. I love it. That's my favorite part is that aspect. So
going back to what you were talking about with the emotional content, like I do a women's self-defense class every Friday, and the last couple of weeks I've been covering What do you do when someone's coming at you with a knife? I mean, yeah, we teach drills, we teach techniques, and we teach everything as far as verbal intervention, verbal de-escalation, running away. But even though it's a fake knife, it's a plastic knife, it's an aluminum knife, it's a rubber knife, it's still a knife. And having to work with that emotional content that comes in for that fight, flight, and freeze, and you see tears coming down the face, or you see just people freeze in place, and having to work through that. It's best to work through that with our schools versus having to deal with that in real life, which I know Jesse wanted to go over that outside the dojo awareness, but having to work with that in a controlled environment, I think, is absolutely necessary if you want to apply the martial arts that you are learning outside of just ABC movement. If you actually want to be able to functionally use what you know, you have to train the mental more than the physical.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
But I do think, for the sake of time and keeping the conversation moving, that was a lot of awesome information for in the dojang, what it takes to be aware, to improve our awareness in the dojang. So pivoting now to
the train.
To the train.
We have the best studio for this. It's amazing. Just let that go by a second. Our school is like situated right on the railroad tracks. The railroad tracks here, school here. But beautiful school. But
that sounds like the start of a Cobra Kai episode. With the voiceover. Our school sat on the railroad tracks.
Gotcha.
Throw them out in the tracks. Let them dodge it as they come in. A little Taisabaki action.
As a kid growing up, we used to go to playgrounds that have all the different poles and slide down the slides and everything. And my buddies and I would get up there and we would spar on top of them. And whoever hit the ground first lost. It was like the floor is lava, but with martial arts.
Nice. Awesome.
Okay, turning now to outside of the dojang. So, awareness is a composite of so many different things coming together into this whole that is, I am aware. I am aware of myself. I'm aware of the situation I'm in. I'm aware of the social implications of this. We could hit a few different points here. I think I want to start with situational awareness, just in general. What are the aspects of situational awareness? And I feel like this will lead us into deeper conversation here.
I think if you talk about situational awareness, I would say everybody inertly has the radar set, right? I think most people know when something doesn't jive, something doesn't sit, but it's the ability to listen to it that becomes the problem, right? Yes, they get the spider senses tingle and they go, I should get out of here, but then they talk themselves out of it. No, I'm with friends. I'm in a safe group. I have this person with me. I have that person with me. I've been here a dozen times. And I think inertly, just the ability and the awareness is built in every human being. It's just, I think through the progress of life, that radar starts to dull down, if that makes sense to anybody on the panel here.
Oh, definitely. Trusting your gut and then going against it is what you're talking about. And yeah, if you're going to be somewhere where somebody's going to be there that is not a really nice or decent person, don't go there. Prevent it. Or if you're in an area, like I tell all of my students, I want to know when your parent is here to pick you up. I want to see their vehicle before you go outside. Now, you're a kid. It's 6 o'clock at night down here in Texas, and it's pitch black outside, and our class ends at 7:15. There's a corner to our building. There's a convenience store. There's a bar just down the street. There's a lot of stuff that can happen. There's a neighborhood behind us. There's a lot of things that can happen that many kids, of course, they're not aware of, and many adults are not aware of. So I always tell them, get off your phone, quit looking at your phone when you walk out of the door, and I want to know where your parents are. You know, if I see you on your phone, I'm going to yell at you, because you need to pay attention as soon as you walk out that door to be looking left, looking right, knowing where you are in the parking lot. And even adults, I tell them the same thing. I said, there's too many people I've seen. They just, as soon as they walk out, they're like, they're on their phone, their head's down, their head's not on a swivel. And it's very stupid, just to be fair. And it happens everywhere. As somebody that teaches self-defense, I need to practice what I preach, for one, and two, I need to see who's aware and who's not. So some things I do, like if I'm going to Walmart or going to the grocery store, you know, where am I parking? If I'm in my apartment, am I parking in a space where there's at least one or two car spaces between me and another vehicle? Do I have no choice but to park in between two actual vehicles? Are the vehicles tinted windowed? Are they large vehicles? Are they small vehicles? Is there potentially somebody in them? At grocery stores, when I'm walking around in the store, I'm buying groceries. I have my little push buggy. I'm looking at people as like, how far away am I from this person? How far away is this person from me? Is there somebody behind me? I'm not so much in a paranoid state, but being aware can definitely help mitigate potential situations. You know, if you're working on your cell phone and you hit somebody with a little buggy cart, you know, what do? You say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Well, get off your phone. You know, stop moving.
Yeah. One of Alan Burris, who is probably the shooting survival guy that I trust the most, has a little tagline about get your head out of your apps.
Yes, I like that. I like that.
Awesome. You know, just on the same line of thinking, I'm sure you guys have had this experience many times. You get a new student, he comes on the floor, he starts training, he falls in love with it, he gets real passionate, or her, and they come to you and they say, sir, I just can't stop thinking about scenarios. You know, what, like if I'm in this situation, what do I do? In that situation, what do I do? And that's kind of like when you know you're a martial artist, right? When you start running through endless scenarios in your head. But what that also tells you is that these people aren't running through scenarios in their head all the time like we are. And sometimes we take that for granted. We think, oh yeah, everyone's like, you know, really looking at the situation and seeing the threats, but most people aren't, you know, and I think that's an important distinction to make and thing to think about.
I did that growing up. When I got to a point where I was comfortable in my martial arts and I started thinking, oh, I'm going to do this, or this, if somebody does this, or this. And then I come to realize real quick that plans go out the window when you get hit in the mouth. Mike Tyson. But yes, I have students that do that too. And they ask me, hey, what about this? What about this? What about this? I say, don't be there. That's my go-to answer. Don't be there. If you have to worry about that situation, then you went and you are engrossed within an area that you should not be in. And you need to reflect on that first. We can always work technique, but if you're going to areas where situations can occur, I can't help you there if you don't listen to, don't be there.
Yes, sir.
And it's interesting because it's like that's line item number one. If you find yourself in a situation where you feel uncomfortable, change the situation.
Exactly.
If you still feel uncomfortable, well, then there's a larger problem at play. And, you know, to the point earlier, you know, if you park in a parking lot somewhere at the shopping mall and you're like, I don't really feel comfortable here, well, just leave and park somewhere else. If that feeling goes away, then carry on with your day. But if you're still kind of like, this isn't right, well, then there's something larger at play. And to, again, the earlier point, you know, everybody has that inherent instinct, and it's not going to take you a lot of time to pivot and just change that situation.
Yes, sir.
It's tough though too. I mean, that's just to play devil's advocate, because sometimes your instincts are wrong. Like sometimes you're like, man, this just looks like a sketchy place, and you realize, wow, this is actually just a normal part of town. It's just kind of gotten run down a little bit. You know, when I go up to like Ohio, it looks like everything's falling apart because all the roads, because of the ice and stuff, like, you know, breaks it all up and stuff. It looks like it's never been repaired in 100 years, but I could be walking through a nice part of town. And so, I mean, that's just one arbitrary example, but life is like that too. You know, you might see somebody you think is a threat and it turns out not to be. And I mean, you certainly want to just be like, oh, I'm not going to deal with you, you know, and ignore that person. That could be very rude. And that could actually lead to a further threat.
I think a lot of that has to do with stereotyping.
What do you say?
I think a lot of that has to deal with stereotyping as well. I mean, the media shows so much of what's good and so much of what's bad and so much of what somebody should look like and act like and talk like and be like, that even TV shows do it. And like, okay, the person hanging out, such as us, like we have sports jackets and hoodies and things. And if we didn't have a logo and it was just a hoodie and I had it over my head and I'm just kind of chilling out just sitting on a curb because I needed to sit down for a minute because my feet hurt, you know, how do you approach me? Or do you shy away completely? Is this a bum? Is this somebody who's going to be violent towards me? There's a lot of stereotyping that's involved with what you're talking about. And if we could fight to a degree that stereotype, I think that would make things better in a situation. I have a couple of gentlemen that come to sit in front of my school all the time. I just sit there and I just talk to them like, hey, how's it going, guys? They're part of an AA group. Okay. There's other people that come in, they're part of a daycare center. There's a convenience store literally right next to my school. People come and sit down all the time. I don't open my school till 5:30. I show up at 5, people are hanging out. Doesn't bother me. I just sit there and talk to them like, hey, what's going on? How you guys doing? This, that, the other. We have excellent conversation. Sometimes they want to talk, sometimes they don't. We don't bother each other though. But if we get away from stereotyping for the most part, I think that would definitely help a lot more in situation awareness.
Well, that's one of the advantages of training, right? Where the degree of risk that you're taking by talking to somebody who's maybe sketching you out for stereotype reasons is lower than the level of risk most normal mortals are going to face in that same situation. Correct. One of the reasons we train is because we can walk into a slightly more sketchy situation. We can have a more colorful and vibrant experience in our lives because we can get out of that if we guessed wrong.
Yeah. And one of the things I teach everybody with our self-defense for situation where specifically, it goes back to the keep your head on a swivel thing or keep your head out your apps deal. But if I see you and you see me, and it's going to get confusing. If I see you seeing me, seeing you see me, you're less likely to do something because I know that you are there. You know that I am here and we can recognize one another.
You know, to your point, Mr. Olds, you know, sometimes you're going to be in a place or a scenario where, you know, maybe you have to be there, but again, it's in your power to control and change that situation. So if you're in a neighborhood where it's like, well, at first you feel a bit off ease, you know, just you change your behavior and you gradually introduce yourself to the situation until you get comfortable. So again, it goes back to you're in control of what you do. So you don't always have to leave the situation, but let's say you're at a strip mall and you don't necessarily trust a strip mall. You want to go into one store, but you don't like what's there. You go in, maybe you take a lap, take a look, and then you leave and you go somewhere else. And then maybe you come back. And then you have to control your comfort level. And, you know, no one's going to do that for you. And there is no magic bullet to make everything perfect. It's just, you know yourself, and you have to be willing to change your behavior to do what needs to be done.
Emotional control.
Yeah. And I think that's an adjunct to situational awareness that's underserved, which is permission to act on that awareness. When we think about a toddler has no compunctions about letting us know when they're uncomfortable. If they're uncomfortable, we will know that immediately. And then we spend the next 20 years telling them not to act on that discomfort, whether it's they don't want to give a hug to that one family member who's sketching them out a little bit, or there's an adult at school who's clearly operating from a power dynamic instead of an education dynamic. We've all met that teacher, but we tell them that they have to do exactly what they're told. And as they get older, there's the social dynamic. And as they get older than that, there's the dynamic of what's societally appropriate. And by the time you're 21, you've been trained not to give yourself permission to act on those safety signals. And that's something that in our schools, we have to fight against that.
Yes, sir.
It's a balance, because like some robustness is important too. You know, I mean, when we're going down the line and we're rotating partners, we've all had that one student on the floor, probably more than one, who's got a little bit of control issues that we're working through. And, you go to pair them up with somebody. That person who's getting paired up with them, they know that there's a chance this person could do a wild swing and maybe hit them in the lip or something. And, they could just say, this is 2 days. Like, I know that this could happen, so I'm going to check out. I'm just going to go sit down over here. And what kind of environment would that create if every single kid did that? That would just destroy your class, basically. So, we also have to teach our students to be resilient and like, look, that's going to happen. Sometimes you're going to get partnered up with somebody who has a little bit of control issues that we are working through. I'm going to watch you. I'm going to make sure that he doesn't hurt you. And, I might have to interject a few times, but, it's part of your warrior training to, roll with those punches,
Yeah.
Literally.
And I do the same thing, especially with grappling. I'm sure, Master Olds, you do this as well. When a young lady comes in and they're starting to grapple, I mean, that's a very up close and very interpersonal space you're in. And if that young lady is uncomfortable with rolling, even with myself, I will put her with somebody that she can be comfortable working with. Same thing with young men. Yeah. If a young man went through some sort of trauma and he is uncomfortable being this close to somebody else, be it man or woman, then we need to work with that and start building that trust in a extended family, if you will, versus what the situation is they have to work with outside of the school. They need to have a safe haven. So to your point, that's definitely something that I do.
On that same line, and this is kind of going back to something we were talking about before, but that rough and tumble play is so important for children when they're developing, because if they don't get it when they're young, they don't know how to interact physically with people. And I've had like fully grown adults come in that just are much more awkward than, some of my little kids with working with other people. And it can become almost, it can be very hard to change later on in life once it's gotten to that point. I'll give you a couple of examples. I had two guys who were training with me back in college, great students, a lot of potential martial arts, but they were both getting started. They were both white belts, and they were actually friends. They were friends, and I think they may have actually lived together in college. And we went out to the bar, and one of them who was becoming a little bit more broy because of his martial arts training, comes up and kind of like pats his friend on the back, and he's like, "Hey man, it's good to see you." And he just snapped and just punched him in the face and like cold clocked him. And like, I didn't think he quite knocked him out, but he was dazed for a second as he got back up. And I was like, dude, guys, you're friends. Like, what just happened? And he's like, "I'm sorry. I just wasn't used to that kind of physical contact and I snapped." And it's like that. These are really sane, easygoing people, but they just didn't get enough of that rough and tumble play when they were young. And that's how it manifests later. I don't know if you worked with kids. I mean, you guys have all worked with kids for a long time, but I'm sure you've had this experience too, where you work with one kid and they like know how to like kind of go with you. Maybe you pick them up and they go still, right? That's what you're supposed to do. Or you pick up another person, they start thrashing about, and you're like, you're gonna break your neck. Like when I go to pick you up, you're supposed to like chill out so that doesn't happen. Or you go to play with somebody and they just like they go to fight back and they just grab your hair and just knee you in the face, and you're like, no, this is like a way too much aggression for what we're doing right now. And like all of that stuff gets panned out with that rough and tumble play, which is basically what we're teaching in our academies, from a young age.
Definitely agree to that. I like sparring with little kids. They're fun because you never know what they're going to do. They're the most dangerous person in the room, and to get them to learn and understand that at such a young age will just help them develop so much more when they're older. And then with adults that come in that have never had that, to your point as well, get that one-on-one with them with somebody that is an adult. Say, all right, this is what I'm going to have you do. I'm not going to hit. You're going to do all the hits, boom, 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 work pad work or something. And now I'm going to slowly integrate my strikes or my kicks or my grapples or whatever into that situation to have them work their way out. So, you know, it's a slow step, but it's still progress forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. So going back to, you know, awareness outside the dojo, I'm hearing a lot of, you know, what, you know, Sensei Jason Brick was talking about when he came for a seminar, which is like that first step is like kind of planning, like know where to go and what, you know, even before you get in that situation, you can avoid a lot of that. Once you're in that situation, what kind of awareness are we talking about? What are some strategies for those?
Know where your exits are. That's number one. Know where your exits are. If it gets to a degree where you have to defend yourself, know where potential weapons are, whether it's for yourself or if somebody else may have one. We live in you and I. We live in Texas. How many people hold a firearm in their vehicle? How many people hold a firearm on themselves? How many people have knives on themselves? I mean, you can walk around with a sword for Texas knife laws, and not that you're not going to get questioned, but it's not illegal. So, you know, what are those things? Those are the first things I think of. Exits. I go to a restaurant and I sit down. Is my back to the door, or am I able to, it's more like security minded military type stuff, but am I able to see the door? Do I see where people are entering and exiting? Have I already scanned the room? If I'm in a situation where, you know, I've been around a group of people that I have no idea who these folks are. Who is the loudest one in the room? Who's the quietest one in the room? Who is the most potential threat? Who's the one that I want on my side? These are all questions that I ask myself within a matter of seconds. Yeah. And I try to train, especially when it comes to situation awareness, when it's specifically focused on that. And again, not to go to a paranoia state of it, but to ask yourself these questions consistently. Because the whole saying, you keep your friends close, you keep your enemies closer, kind of plays into here. But if I'm in a group of area with people I've been friends with back in high school, but I haven't seen them in 20 years, well, you're not really my friend. You're an acquaintance. Things change over a long period of time. So again, it goes back to those questions. Where are my exits? Where are my weapons? Who's the loud guy? Who's the quiet guy? Who's the big guy? Who's the one that's likely to run their mouth and start something? Who is this? Who is that? And I do it in a matter of seconds. Doesn't mean I'm not going to have a good time or stay there and talk with people. I just have to engage everybody a little bit differently. You might know what red, white, and blue is, and somebody might know what purple, green, and yellow is, and y'all don't like each other because you don't recognize the other colors. You know, it could be something that simple. Mm-hmm. So you have to engage it all separately.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir.
So my wife actually taught me something like this, and it was both a really useful tool and a kind of reminder of how different mindsets and different contexts work. We've been married just 5 years. We took our first international trip, and we're there on the subway. So I'm teaching her, you know, a tactical breakdown, very much like Mr. Arenstein just said about, you know, where I'm basically the Terminator going through the little menu and checking each person, right? Yeah. And she says, oh, I do something like that all the time. I just pretend the zombie apocalypse just happened and I build my team. Okay, who here's going to be the best person for my physical safety? Which person here's probably going to be taking care of the kids? Which person's going to have to get kicked out of the car? And it was, she was doing the exact same thing, but from a very less tactical operating operationally standpoint. And I liked it.
That's cool.
I
like that.
I thought so.
Well, that, you know, when women are distressed, they tend to pull other people into the fight. Whereas when men are distressed, we figure out, okay, we have to take care of this. So we're going to figure out how to take this
by ourselves.
And so that's exactly the difference that you're articulating there. Like, you're like, okay, here's systematically how I'm going to defend myself and defend my family. And she's like, okay, these are the people I'm going to ally with, you know, that are going to come around me and defend me.
That's a perfect dynamic too. I mean, especially to, biblical sense, that's a perfect dynamic. So it's great. You don't see a lot of that. So that's really cool. I like the zombie apocalypse, and I have to use that.
Yeah.
Like, which one of you am I kicking off the cart into the zombies first? So that way the rest of us can get where we need to go. So, do you want to be the one? And you start pointing them out. Do you want to be the one? Do you want to be the one? Could be you.
Yeah.
And I was just going to say that I think what both you gentlemen are talking about, I think us as people that practice martial arts for a number of years kind of do it routine, right? We don't even think about it. You know, I generally don't sit, you know, I like to have my back to the wall in any restaurant we're in. I like to see the room, you know, it's just, for whatever reason, that's just the way it happens. But I think when I talk to especially newer people, you know, into the martial arts or just into the realm of like, they're starting to be more mindful of their self-defense. I kind of just tell them you're looking for change, right? If you go to a room and you take a temperature, you know, all things being equal, if nothing else, if everything stays at a certain level, you know, no harm, no foul. But it's when it changes up or down, right? That boisterous table that all of a sudden gets quiet. Like, okay, why? What happened? Did somebody say something to the wrong person that now tensions are escalating? You know, what happens to that? You know, that person that walks in that just changes the dynamic of whatever room you're in. Like if more than one people are keying on some uncomfortable factors, it's just, again, it's the assumption of risk. It's, you know, don't overreact, but it's something to take note of. It's something that, you know, at least register, you know, put a, you know, a dog ear on the page in your brain that says, okay, let's glance that way every so often just to make sure there's nothing weird going on. And you know, it shouldn't be, but I think the process by which each of you described is a learned form, right? You can't just tell somebody, just do this, this, and this. And they're like, oh, I got it. Great. I'll do it from here on in. And it's got to be, you know, they have to key on certain things as they learn in the process. And some of those keys may be nothing. They may be something that they register and they go, oh, it's not what I thought it was. And they move on. But sometimes it is.
You never know. Yeah. But I also think, to your point as well, if there is no risk, you've never left your domicile. You've never left your house. You've never left your couch. You're playing it safe the whole time. But you have to have some risk. You have to go out of your house. You have to go to the bathroom. You have to get off your couch. There's risk in everything that you do, but you have to be aware of it. And I think that's the biggest thing and biggest takeaway is it doesn't matter where you go. You can't be paranoid about it. You have to be aware, maybe security minded, depending on your background and where you come from, but you can't be afraid of it. And I think that fear mitigate or negates a lot of forward progression in martial arts in everyday life because, I'm afraid, I don't want to go to my car because I'm afraid someone's going to carjack me. You're in the middle of a parking lot. Nobody else is around. The closest person to you is like 600 feet away. There's a possibility. I'm not going to lie. Hollywood has all kinds of things going on right now. But you still can't be afraid of it. Yeah. You have to be aware of it. There's a big difference.
I think that's a piece of awareness. Oh, please carry on.
No, well, there goes the train again. Especially as a leader, you know, as a leader, you have to take bold action and go into dark places to rescue people sometimes, to bring them to a safer place. You know, I have a lot of people come to me wanting to learn how to defend themselves. And some of them, you know, I'm like, man, this guy's kind of the bully he's describing that he is being picked on by, but that person just is so unself-aware that they don't realize it. And I have to take that person in. I could just say, no, you're too much risk. Like you stay out. But I think as a good leader, you know, you take that person in to the extent that it's possible and sort of nurture them up, because a lot of times I've found that when you do that, you can take somebody who's really self-aware of that bullying behavior, become aware of it, and become a great leader. And so you got to take those risks sometimes. You got to get off that couch. You got to go into those dark places and help bring people into the light.
And that emotional awareness you're talking about is another important piece of when we're in the moment. Being aware of that other person. Is this person showing off for the women at table 2? Is this person drunk or stoned? Is this person just after my wallet is going to go away? Is this person a process predator whose the entire purpose that they have here in this moment is to harm us? And then also awareness of ourselves. Are we stressed out? Are we scared? Are we freaked out? Are we responding with our ego? And are we nursing an injury? Are we responding with our testosterone and our ego? Because how dare this person speak to me this way? are we showing off for the girls at table too?
Yeah.
You know, all of those things, being aware of those things can be vitally important to getting out of a situation in one piece and then also surviving the potential legal fracas afterwards.
Yeah, and it's important too, because I always liken martial arts training to, like, you're preparing for that pop math quiz that you hope never shows up. Like, you know, your whole life and everything you train for is to be ready for that situation, you know, that you hope never comes up. And just by training, you're more prepared than doing nothing, theoretically. You know, but when you're in this, when you actually get to that situation, like, you never really know how you're going to react. I mean, in my younger days when I worked in retail, we did loss prevention. You know, there was a handful of situations, and 2 of the situations I knew exactly what I was doing. One situation I just kind of reacted, and I'll be honest, the 4th situation I just froze. Like, you never really know. As much as you train and as much as you're ready, your reaction at any given point of time is going to be based off of whatever's going on that day. So everything we've been talking about, of being aware of what's going on, you know, having an exit strategy, being observant of changes, you know, that's all part and parcel to avoiding having to take that pop quiz.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
You never know what's going to happen until you get there.
Yep.
You know, 2 people also mentioned being alert for change, and I think that's a hugely important part of situational awareness. And also, in my show where I've been interviewed all these experts about child safety, that was a through line from advice from people in so many disciplines about being alert for change in your kid. A good example is, if you've got a kid who wears all black, listens to Cannibal Corpse all day long, that's not necessarily a sign that that kid's in crisis. But if you've got a kid like that who all of a sudden stops going to concerts and switches to Celine Dion, that's an opportunity to go check in and see what's going on and find out what's going on in their lives that's making this change happen. We all know about what it means if our spouse quickly changes their behavior, radically changes their behavior. It means that we forgot something. We forgot an anniversary or a birthday, and we need to get on that immediately. So that awareness, that alertness for change isn't just valuable from a tactical security standpoint, but helps us be better parents, better spouses, better friends, better employees. It's a very generalizable skill.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, guys, you know, we have gone for about an hour, and I don't want to take too much of your time. Do you guys have any, final closing thoughts on awareness that you want to get out and share with our audience?
Call us. Simply call us, email us, text us, get on our websites, visit us, and have a one-on-one conversation. If you are interested, or even if you don't want to train in martial arts and just interested in having a conversation, reach out.
Absolutely.
That's probably the biggest thing I could say is reach out. Don't be afraid. The only bad question is the one that's not asked.
Yes, sir.
I was just going to say that, you know, anybody out there, whether martial artists or not, that's, you know, this has been egging at them. I think it's important just to remember it's not a one size fits all approach. You know, everybody's got different ways of approaching things. Everybody's got different ways to de-escalate. Everybody's got different things that escalate them, and you know, variety is a constant, right? It's going to be out there any way you look at it, and you can't expect someone that you're teaching to do it the exact same way that you're doing it when you're being aware of a situation, you're assessing a situation, but you also can't do it the same way every time either. It's gotta flow with the way things are, and I think someone made the point earlier, you know, where are you that day? What baggage are you bringing to the situation? You have to be aware of those things too. So it's a constant ebb and flow of what you're looking for and what you plan to do.
Yes, sir.
And there's more of us as far as martial artists and instructors and school owners out there than what's on the internet and what you see on videos. So, I mean, there's more likely a local school somewhere where you live that you could go in and talk to them. So if there's a local school, or there's, like I said, us, I mean, we're on the internet a little bit. There are so many people out there who are willing and wanting to help, assist, have conversation, build people up. I mean, that's what we do. We build people up. We don't tear them down.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So if people want to get involved with your guys' programs, where would they start? Let's just start with Sifu Arenstein. Can you tell them website?
You can go to our website, www.springmartialarts.com. It has a plethora of information on there. The contact page on there sends an email directly to me. I have 24-hour access to the emails. I've got Facebook. I've got personal Facebook. I've got a business Facebook. I've got LinkedIn profiles. I have a lot of information on me out there where not hard to find. So if somebody wants to reach out, have some conversation, I'd be willing to have some conversation. We can have some coffee and have a phone call, even if it's that simple.
Awesome. Gaudynski brothers, can you tell us a little bit about your program? How do they reach out to you?
Sure, just Google Wisconsin Sport Aikido and we'll show up.
We're active on Facebook, Instagram, and website as well, wissportaikido.com.
Awesome. And then Mr. Brick?
You can find Safest Family on the Block on YouTube. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram. This week, we're dropping our 97th episode.
Wow.
And much like Mr. Arenstein was saying, I'm a huge nerd about this, and I will nerd out about this with anybody who'll sit still long enough for me to do it with them. So please do reach out via direct message, private message, email, if you have any questions, and we'll talk.
And we're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok as well. So there's a lot of stuff. You can see sample videos and things like that too. So if anybody has any question of what we do, how we do it, I mean, samples are samples, but it's better to talk to them.
Awesome.
Yes,
well, guys, it's been a pleasure having you on. I hope we can have you back on sometime in the future. Have a great day.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Excellent.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you, gentlemen. It was a real pleasure.
If you enjoyed that podcast, please consider liking and subscribing to our YouTube channel, as well as hitting the notification bell. We offer in-person, group, and private lessons at our facility in Kyle, Texas, as well as virtual lessons anywhere in the world. If you'd like to learn more about our programs, you can find us online at risingphoenixtkd.com.